I hadn't even shut the car door when I saw them. My father and my brother, posted on my porch like they'd been waiting for curtain call. One leaning against the railing. The other holding a drink like this was a barbecue instead of a crime scene. My duffel bag cut into my shoulder. Dust from overseas still clung to my boots. Jet lag hummed behind my eyes. And before I could take a third step toward the house I had worked half my adult life to own, my father smiled and said, "You don't live here anymore." Just like that. No welcome back. No hook. No how was the flight. Just eviction served cold. For a moment, I honestly thought I'd misheard him. My brain was still adjusting to being back on American soil. I stared at him, then at my brother, who lifted his drink in a lazy salute and smirked. "We sold it," he said. "Try to keep up." They laughed. Laughed. I stood there, bags at my feet, staring at the front door I'd repainted myself one summer while my friends were at the beach. The porch light I'd installed after my last promotion. The house that was supposed to be my one constant in a life built on deployments and orders and goodbyes. "You're joking," I said. My father shook his head. "Your brother needed help. You weren't around. Families make sacrifices." Then he tilted his head and added, like it was a clever observation, "You're never in one place anyway. What difference does a house make to you?" I should have screamed. I should have thrown something. I should have collapsed into tears like they clearly expected. Instead I smiled. Not a big smile. Not a dramatic one. Just slow, calm, controlled. The kind that makes people uncomfortable. My brother stopped laughing first. My father narrowed his eyes. "What's so funny?" he snapped. I adjusted the strap on my duffel and said evenly, "The house you sold isn't actually." I stopped myself. Not yet. Because if there's one thing I learned overseas, it's this. You don't fire before you've confirmed the target. I looked at them again, really looked. My brother, late adulthood, still allergic to responsibility, still wearing entitlement like cologne. The same man who'd almost gotten back on his feet, more times than I could count. My father, shoulders tense, jaw tight, already rehearsing his justifications. They thought this moment was the end of my story. They had no idea it was the opening scene. I set my bag down gently. "Before we do this," I said, "I need you to understand something." My brother rolled his eyes. "Oh, here we go." I stepped closer to the porch, close enough to see the flicker of uncertainty in my father's eyes. "You didn't just sell a house," I said. "You sold something you didn't fully own." The color drained from my father's face so fast it was almost impressive. My brother laughed again, louder this time. "Don't start with the tough talk. Dad had authorization. Clean sale. You'll get over it." I nodded. Maybe. Then I looked past them, and froze. Because standing in the doorway, holding a mug with some cheerful saying printed on it, was a woman I had never seen before. She blinked at me, confused, curious. And when she spoke, my stomach dropped. "Hi," she said politely. "Can I help you?" I turned back to my father. "Who," I asked slowly, "is that?" He didn't answer. My brother's grip tightened on the railing. The woman hesitated, then smiled awkwardly. "I'm the new owner." That's when I knew. They hadn't just planned to sell my house. They'd already finished the job. And they had no idea how badly they'd messed up. I smiled again. This time, it wasn't for them. It was because I finally understood something they didn't. They thought I was calm because I was beaten. I was calm because I was 10 steps ahead. And in about 90 seconds, everything they thought they'd secured was about to unravel. The truth is, none of this started on that porch. It started months earlier, halfway across the world, in a place where the air was thick, the nights were loud with insects, and sleep came in short, restless stretches. Deployment teaches you patterns. You learn when something feels off long before you can explain why. I'd taken the assignment because it was predictable. Predictable schedules. Predictable days. Predictable boredom. After years of chaos, that felt like a gift. I called home every week. Not because I missed my father. Not really. Not because I trusted my brother. Definitely not. I called because of the house. I'd bought it after one of my early assignments, Back when my bank account finally outweighed my doubt. I renovated it myself. Fixed things slowly, carefully, one room at a time. That place wasn't just shelter. It was proof. Proof that I could build something that didn't disappear every time orders changed. So I checked in. At first, everything sounded normal. My father complained about the weather, about his knee, about the price of groceries. My brother, apparently, was figuring things out. That phrase again. But then the tone shifted. My father started answering the phone irritated, like my calls were interruptions instead of check-ins. He'd rush conversations, change subjects. Once he sighed heavily and said, "You always call at the worst time." Which was funny, because I always called at the same time. I heard noises in the background that didn't belong. Voices that stopped abruptly when I spoke. Laughter that didn't sound relaxed. Once someone yelled, "Did she send it yet?" before the line went dead. I called back. Straight to voicemail. I told myself not to read into it. That's what disciplined people do, right? They don't panic without proof. 2 weeks before I was scheduled to return, I got a text from my father. Just 4 words. Call before you come. No explanación. No puntuación. No worms. That message sat on my screen longer than it should have. Every instinct I'd trained over years of service tightened all at once. The same feeling you get before a storm hits. Before a situation turns. I tried calling that night. Voicemail. The next morning. Voicemail again. I told myself it was nothing. Told myself I was exhausted. Told myself I'd handle it when I landed. That was mistake number 1. The Betrayal warning came a few days later, standing outside the barracks, staring at my phone while the sun slid down behind concrete buildings and buzzing lights. An automated notification. Property update. I frowned. I hadn't changed anything. No refinancing. No applications. No paperwork. But there it was, a processed update. Not complete. Not verified. Just started. My name was still there. But another name had been added. Blurry. Partial. Like someone had opened a door but hadn't walked through yet. I called my father immediately. Nothing. I called my brother. Nothing. I called again. Still nothing. The air felt heavier. My chest tightened in that quiet way panic sneaks up on you before it announces itself. The next day, during lunch, I did something most people wouldn't think to do. I walked into the legal office. The officer I spoke to didn't panic. Didn't dramatize. He just asked one question that changed everything. Who has your power of attorney? I answered without thinking. My father. His expression shifted, not shocked, not judgmental. Recognizing. He'd seen this story before. Trust is good, he said carefully. Oversight is better. He told me what to request. Who to email. Which forms mattered. Which wording couldn't be ignored. I sent everything that afternoon. When the documents came back, I read them sitting on my bunk, surrounded by noise and laughter that felt like it belonged to another world. The signatures were real. The timing was deliberate. The money trail led exactly where I expected. My father hadn't hesitated. My brother had benefited. I stared at the screen and felt something inside me go very still. Not anger. Clarity. I didn't confront them then. I didn't argue. I didn't warn. Because people who think they've gotten away with something make the best mistakes next. I finished my assignment without a word. Booked my flight quietly. Didn't announce my return. Didn't tell anyone. By the time my plane touched down, I wasn't coming home to confront a betrayal. I was coming home with a plan. And they were standing on my porch, smiling, thinking they'd already won. The woman in the doorway looked like someone who didn't belong in chaos. Soft sweater. Bare feet. A mug with some cheerful phrase that felt aggressively optimistic given the circumstances. She smiled at me like I was a delivery person who'd knocked on the wrong door. "I'm the new owner," she said. Behind her, I could see movement. Furniture I didn't recognize. A lamp where my reading chair used to be. The house looked familiar in the way a childhood home looks after someone else moves in. My father finally found his voice. "Let's not make this uncomfortable," he said quickly. "This has already been handled." Handled? That word again. I turned back to the woman. Did they tell you everything? She hesitated. They said you were overseas. That you agreed to sell. I nodded slowly. Of course they did. My brother laughed, sharp and defensive. She's being dramatic. Papers are signed. Money's exchanged. It's done. I watched his confidence crack when I didn't argue. Instead, I asked the woman, who handled the sale? She glanced at my father before answering. A friend of the family. He said it would be faster that way. Faster. That was the second red flag. No lawyer? I asked. She shook her head. He said it wasn't necessary. Behind me, my father shifted his weight. I could feel his nerves radiating. I turned back to him. You told her I approved it. He opened his mouth, then closed it. My brother stepped in. Dad had authorization. That's what matters. I smiled faintly. Authorization isn't ownership. The woman frowned. What does that mean? I took a breath. Calm. Measured. Years of training had taught me that the quieter you speak, the harder people lean in. It means, I said, that what they sold you isn't as simple as they made it sound. My father snapped. Enough. You're upsetting her. I turned to him slowly. You upset her the moment you lied. Silence spread across the porch like spilled oil. The woman clutched her mug tighter. Are you saying the sale isn't valid? I'm saying, I replied, that this property comes with protections. Specific ones. And those protections don't disappear because someone is impatient. My brother scoffed. You're bluffing. I met his eyes. You always think that. He looked away first. The woman swallowed. I don't understand. Everything looked official. Paperwork often does, I said. That doesn't make it legal. My father stepped closer, lowering his voice. We can fix this quietly. I shook my head. You already tried quiet. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out a folded document. Not the original. Just enough. The woman leaned forward instinctively, eyes scanning the page. What is that? She asked. A copy, I said, of something that explains why this house can't be sold the way they sold it. Her face drained of color. My father's hands started to shake. My brother's grin vanished entirely. This house, I continued, was purchased under specific terms. That means selling it without the owner present, without consent, and without proper filings isn't just a family issue. I looked at my father. It's a legal one. The woman took a step back. So what happens now? I didn't answer right away. I let them sit in it. The confusion, the fear, the realization that their neat little plan had holes they hadn't seen. Finally, I said, now you get a lawyer. My father snapped. You're blowing this out of proportion. I met his gaze. You sold a protected asset using temporary authority while I was deployed. His mouth opened, closed. The woman whispered, I need to make a call. Yes, I said gently. You do. She turned and disappeared back inside, door closing softly behind her. The porch felt smaller without her there. My brother exhaled sharply. You're really doing this? I nodded. You really started it. For the first time since I'd arrived, neither of them spoke. They were waiting for me to soften. I didn't. Because the moment the buyer stepped into the picture, this stopped being a private betrayal. And they had just stepped into something they couldn't outrun. I didn't sleep that night. I checked into the cheapest motel I could find. Buzzing sign, thin walls, air conditioner that rattled like it was fighting for its life. I dropped my bag on the floor and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone while missed calls stacked up like unanswered questions. I didn't return a single one. Because silence, when used correctly, is louder than yelling. By morning, the knot in my chest had hardened into something solid. Focused. The kind of calm that only comes after you've accepted that whatever happens next is unavoidable. I went straight to the county office when the doors opened. The clerk barely looked surprised when I explained what I needed. She slid forms across the counter like she'd done this 100 times before. Maybe she had. When she came back with the full packet, her expression softened just a little. This is complicated, she said. I nodded. It usually is. From there, I walked into the sheriff's office. Different energy. Different stakes. The deputy recognized me immediately. Back in town already? Came home to a situation. He took one look at the folder and didn't ask questions. He just led me back. By the time I finished explaining everything, the power of attorney, the rushed sale, the missing consent, the middleman, the room felt heavier. The lieutenant leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. This isn't small, he said. I know. He flipped through the pages again. Once we start, there's no undoing it. I didn't hesitate. Start. That afternoon, the calls went out. The buyer was contacted. The county flagged the sale. And a visit was scheduled. I wasn't there when they knocked on my father's door. But I know how it went. Because my phone rang not long after. My father's voice was different this time. Smaller. Stripped of authority. They came by, he said. They asked questions. I know. You didn't have to do this. I closed my eyes. You didn't have to sell my home. Silence. The next morning, I returned to the house. The buyer stood on the porch again, no coffee mug this time. Just tension and red eyes. Her attorney arrived shortly after. Calm. Precise. Unimpressed. Then the deputy. Then my father and brother. They looked diminished. Noise mirks. No confidence. Just two men realizing that paperwork doesn't care about excuses. We stood in the yard while procedures were explained. Statements taken. Boundaries drawn. My brother tried to speak once. His lawyer shut that down immediately. My father kept glancing at me like I might save him. I didn't. Because saving him is how we got here. When the deputy mentioned potential charges, my father's face drained completely. I didn't mean. I know, I said quietly. That doesn't change what you did. The buyer's attorney explained next steps. Funds. Reversals. Investigations. Everything my father thought he'd controlled was now out of his hands. That's when it hit him. Not when I confronted him. Not when the buyer appeared. Not even when the sheriff arrived. It hit him when he realized I wasn't stopping it. As they drove away, my brother didn't look back. My father did. I stood there alone after everyone left, the house quiet behind me. For the first time since I landed, I let myself breathe. Because this wasn't revenge. This was accountability. And there was one more thing left to face. The yard felt different once everyone left. No raised voices. No footsteps. No tension vibrating through the boards of the porch. Just stillness. The kind that settles after something breaks open and finally stops resisting. I stood there longer than I meant to, staring at the front door. The same door I'd walked through 1,000 times with muddy boots, grocery bags, exhaustion, pride. I rested my hand against the wood, feeling the familiar grain beneath my palm. I didn't go inside. Not yet. That house had been occupied by lies for too long, and I needed distance before I reclaimed it. Later that evening, my phone rang again. This time, I answered. My father didn't sound angry anymore. He didn't sound defensive. He sounded tired in a way I'd never heard before. They said it could go to court, he said quietly. Yes. I might lose everything. I closed my eyes. You already lost something. This is just the paperwork catching up. There was a long pause. I thought you'd protect us, he finally said. I protected myself, I replied. You taught me how to do that. He didn't argue. The investigation moved faster than I expected. Faster than they'd planned for. The rushed sale, the missing approvals, the misuse of authority, none of it held up under scrutiny. The middleman vanished briefly, then reappeared with a lawyer. That didn't help him. The buyer was reimbursed. The sale was voided. The house was returned to my name, untouched by the law but permanently altered by truth. My brother stopped calling altogether. My father gave a full statement. When it was over, he came to see me one last time. He looked older, smaller, like someone who'd finally realized strength doesn't mean control. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. That's good, I answered gently, because I don't owe it. He nodded. I'm proud of you, he added. I always was. I just didn't know how to show it. The words mattered. They just came late. After he left, I walked back to the house alone. This time, I opened the door. The room still held echoes of someone else's life. Different furniture, different energy, but beneath it all, the bones were mine. The walls remembered me. The floors did too. I stood in the middle of the living room and laughed softly. Not because it was funny, because it was done. They thought they sold my home while I was gone. What they really sold was the illusion that they could use me without consequence. And the truth is this: being strong doesn't mean being expendable. Being reliable doesn't mean being owned. And silence doesn't mean submission. Sometimes, the quiet ones are just waiting for the right moment to speak. And when they do, the truth doesn't shout. It stands. Please click the subscribe button, like, share, and comment. This will encourage me to make more interesting stories. Also, let's know where you are watching from. Thank you and see you in the next story.